Sex overall is such a pivotal portion of your marriage. It's not everything.
Yeah.
Right? You clearly understand that when you get married. You think it is before, but then you get married and you realize, oh, there's more.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's the most intimate physically that you can become with a person. You're literally sharing your body with another person, and the physical manifestation of becoming one is kind of encapsulated in sexual intimacy.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Rod.
And this is Kai.
And welcome to
Married in the Middle.
We have been married for 18 years. We have 4 amazing kids and a dog named Appa.
This podcast is about helping marriages flourish through the challenges of the middle years.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Rod.
I'm Kai.
And welcome to Married in the Middle. Today, our topic is there's a meeting in my bedroom.
There's a meeting in my bedroom.
Yo! I thought about doing that, and I thought about doing this thing right here.
Wow, that's a lot.
That was too early 90-ish stuff. But we're talking about sex. There's a meeting in my bedroom. We're talking about sex today. And this may be new to you if this is your first time watching Married in the Middle. Our vision is to help as many marriages as we can flourish in those middle years, in those hard years. We want to see a legacy of marriages that you get to enjoy your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, and them see a history and a legacy of marriage between husband and wife. So that's our goal, and we're excited about the topic today.
Amen. I mean, them grandkids and great-grands going to get there.
How they going to get there?
Through this topic today.
Man, one of the things, we're Christians. I'm a pastor. I want to start with this passage in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, that marriage is honorable above all.
Yes, Lord.
And the bed undefiled. This is important. I believe God is for the beauty and the exploration and the excitement and the enjoyability of your sex life. He designed it.
Right.
It's his idea. He made the parts. He knows what happens when the parts get together. It's his idea.
When the parts get together, wow.
His parts get together. It's his idea.
Not the hand motion.
And so, man, we want to enjoy this.
Yeah.
I believe sex is beautiful for married couples, and it's to be enjoyed. We are not talking to single people today. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about people in the covenant of marriage. Yeah. And I think God's a cheerleader for you in this case. So
yeah, and it's an important topic because, I mean, I think over time it's kind of been a taboo topic.
Yeah.
At least people don't talk about it in detail, or they give it under the parameters of what you can't do.
Yeah.
But you said something beautiful from that scripture that the bed is undefiled, and so we really shouldn't be telling people too much on how they should be having sex if they're married. And sex overall is such a pivotal portion of your marriage. It's not everything. Yeah. Right? You clearly understand that when you get married. You think it is before, but then you get married and you realize, oh, there's more. Yeah. But it's important. It's the most intimate physically that you can become with a person. You're literally sharing your body with another person, and the physical manifestation of becoming one is kind of encapsulated in sexual intimacy.
And I think
so it's important.
I think the enemy hates that.
Right.
Before you're married, he's pushing you to have sex. Once you get married,
temptation is real.
Yeah.
Y'all know.
He's pushing you away from having sex. And so, man, we want to talk about sex. We want to encourage married folks in the middle at different parts of their lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's big that we're talking about it here because we focus on marriage in the middle. You know, them early years when it's just you and that other person. Or, you know, it's just the fun of the excitement of the new marriage. You know, it's fun, and I think it can be easier. Of course, there are some challenges that can come about, but it's easier overall, I think. But, you know, with the pressures of everything in the middle years, as some time goes by, with everything happening, work and school and kids and body changes, and it becomes more challenging.
We're gonna get there.
We're gonna get there.
What's our hope? What do we want people to live out in their sexual relationships with their spouses? What's some of our hopes?
A lot of hopes. Hope is good. I think one of the things is consistency. Like our hope is that I think sexual intimacy, although it's not everything, it's a gauge. It's like a temperature gauge on how your marriage is doing.
Yeah.
If you're not connecting sexually, there could be a lot of undergirding reasons why, but it shows some kind of root issue that's going on if you're not having sex. And so our hope is that first that there's some kind of consistency, which can look different for every couple. Some couples overall their nature is different. Maybe they have a flow, or and some couples every day is normalcy.
But
we're not every day. We're not an everydayer kind of couple.
We're not. But I think the goal is there's some unity in what that number is. So the guy starts with his number here, her number here. What are you all agreeing on that's going to be consistent, and how do we live that out in the course of our marriage? And we know, like, there are different seasons. There's stuff goes on. Like, people get sick and people experience all kind of difficulty. There's sexual trauma that may come up in your relationship, and just different stuff going on at different times. I may just have had another child, and
or be pregnant, and we don't know what that looks like. And each pregnancy is even different. If you're having multiple kids, how you were. Maybe on the first pregnancy you were on fire, you weren't ready, but maybe the second pregnancy is like, don't touch me,
Yeah, but what we want to encourage is to work against this idea of married and not having sex with each other.
Right.
We want to confront that today. Our second hope is that it's enjoyable.
Right. It should be enjoyable.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. Now sometimes. Right? Sex is
Sometimes.
duty. Sometimes.
What's that?
It is what it is.
30% of the time is duty. Now the women feeling you.
What that percentage is depends on the couple.
Right.
How often, it kind of similar to consistency. But we just know that in the facets, the different facets of life.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's more of a responsibility. Maybe, and we've met it we've seen it on both sides, where sometimes the woman's nature is stronger, and sometimes, I would say most times the men, their nature is stronger. And so, but overall it shouldn't
always be that way.
It shouldn't always be duty. If it's always just dutiful, that you just need a release.
Yeah. Who wants
that? Who wants that? Well, some men don't mind as long as they get it. Better out than in.
I don't care how it comes, as long as it comes.
Right? But I believe that God designed it to be something that you actually enjoy. Yes, it is for procreation, but it's also for your enjoyment.
Yeah. And I think we leave creativity sometimes at the altar when we get married.
Talk about that.
Bring all your creativity into your bedroom when you're engaging in sex. Like, it's to be enjoyable. And some people may say, how could God regulate me to one sexual partner for life? Because he knows that the body can be explored and discovered and rediscovered and enjoyed in new ways you hadn't thought about yet.
Right.
And so I think there's this need for creativity and excitement in the bedroom to enjoy the one that God's giving you.
Yeah, I think that that's a big lie to debunk, that sex becomes more boring as your marriage continues, as the years go by. But really, as the years go by, it can become more intimate and therefore more beautiful. And, you find more ways, like you said, to discover one another's body, that you never really have to be bored with sex.
Yeah.
So
consistent, enjoyable, and then lastly, and we kind of messed around with the words on this one, generous.
Generous.
We thought about service, but we ended up with generous. And here's the idea: when you and your spouse are together, man, be generous.
Yeah.
Be generous as you give each other that affection. The scripture's talking about don't hold your body back from one another. Man, our encouragement is for you to be generous as you serve your wife, serve your husband through sexual experience.
I think you said something big in that word, and I think we were playing around with that word too, service, and we didn't want it to sound dutiful. But in a way, in order for that previous one was enjoyable, how can it be enjoyable? Not just for you. If you're only thinking about your own enjoyment, then you're really not out to, you're not being very generous. You're not out to serve the other person. And so that generosity looks like your aim is to please that other person. Which means you may have to step outside of your comfort zone. It means you may have to be intentional. There are different ways that you can offer your body to that person, not just, all right, lay down and come get it. There's more to it than that.
But how can I be generous? Like, how can I give? And maybe you say, well, Rodney, I give a lot. I give a lot. You ain't talking to me. This is somebody else. My spouse is happy. Have you asked them?
Have you asked them?
Have you asked them, not out of guilt or not with the sneaky comeback if they say something, but have you just asked your spouse, how am I doing pleasing you sexually? Put that in the comments.
Right.
Yeah, let's share that. Let's subscribe to this episode here. Like, how will you ask your spouse? Here's your homework for today. How am I doing?
How's our sex life
sexually?
Yeah. How is our sex life? And listen, don't be overly confident. Some people kind of just walk around with this air that everything is fine just because you are having sex. But maybe for you it's a release. Maybe for the other person it's duty. Overall, that's not fun. And then everything on TV looks better or on social media seems better. Or some other inappropriate relationship seems like you begin to develop these fantasies in your mind when really you could be exploring your spouse. In that way.
And then even for the person that, if they're honest, they say, Rodney, to be honest, maybe once a year we may have sex.
Real talk, guys.
My challenge to you is, why is that? What causes our sex life to be so limited? Because what you're missing here is God put certain endorphins in the body that are connected to your spouse when you have sex, and you're missing opportunities for that connectedness, especially for men, because men need sex. They're married. They need sex. Most men need that kind of engagement with their spouse. And so if that's not being experienced, then that connectedness is not happening. And it becomes hard and challenging in marriages when they're not.
Yeah, and I would argue to say that women need sex too.
That's good.
I think that we don't feel like we need it as much as men do, because men are visual, and the world could be blowing up on the outside. It could be World War III. But if it's time to go, it's time to go. And women, there's a lot of other factors that play into us being in that vulnerable position where we can offer our bodies up. But there is a beauty in being connected in that way and completely vulnerable to one another in that way. I think both men and women need sex. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. In the confines of marriage.
This is a marriage podcast, y'all.
Okay, just clarifying. People take
listen, y'all grown out there, but we this is aimed towards the married folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of y'all say, yeah, Rodney, that's great, but that ain't us. And particularly in the married years, there are some things that prohibit the consistency of us coming together, the generosity of us coming together, or the enjoyment of us coming together sexually. Let's spend some time talking about what are some of those things that hinder our sexual
we kind of have some notes here, but one thing you mentioned earlier was sexual trauma. And that could be from one party or both parties. And if you haven't yet, you check out our episode on trauma in marriage, where he talks Markin, who's a licensed clinical therapist, specializes in EMDR, talks about different types of trauma in marriage. If that's the case, then you need to seek help. But that's a big hindrance, I think, in a lot of marital relationships. When there's trauma, sexually for one party, it becomes really difficult to engage sexually with your spouse, especially after marriage. Sometimes it can seem easy before marriage, but after, then you see couples starting to experience some of those roadblocks.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one hindrance to intimacy. But another is unresolved conflict. Y'all just got into it. You know, you've been beefing the past few days, and it hasn't been resolved yet.
Yeah.
And like I said, for men, whether you beef and you could have gotten into a screaming toxic argument, and when you get to bed, you know, that hand gonna slide over to them thighs. Like, meanwhile, the women are like, "No, brother, get your hand off of my thigh."
Yeah.
And so I think unresolved conflict is definitely, I would probably say, one of the main reasons for hindrances in sexual intimacy.
For sure. Lack of connection.
Yeah.
I know in our lives, you said to me, yeah, but I don't feel connected. I'm like, I'm trying to connect with you now.
But you just started at 9 p.m.
That's good. It was like 8:30. I'm like, well, it's connection time. Hey,
right. Connection don't start at 8:30,
nice
y'all.
At 8:30.
Right.
No, I think
when you saw me at 8:30 this morning. You were
I ain't say nothing when it's 8:30.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes maybe you're not beefing with one another, but just, you know, you're like sometimes we say we're like two ships passing in the night. Yeah, and so, you know, you get busy with kids, and, you know, maybe the work schedules might be off, and you're not in any disagreements per se, but you just don't feel like you're connected to that person. You haven't had any moment. There's other types of intimacy besides sexual intimacy, and it's just not existing. You know, and sometimes people can go days, weeks, even months without any sense of connectedness. And that's where you hear those stories where it's like we're at, for sexual intimacy, we're about once every 6 months or once a year, you know.
I think it's the idea here where some people say, man, and on top of all of this, we don't even have sex.
Right.
It's like you were expecting sex much earlier in your list of stuff that's going on in your marriage, and not really understanding the need is for overall connection. And this, I'm thinking about marriages that are just in a really rough season. It's not like a day or a week, or it's a season of difficulty and challenges. And man, for that couple, it's paramount, this whole needing to connect with your spouse. And so if I'm talking to you today, like wherever you are, that's the aim.
Yeah.
How do we connect?
How do we connect?
And also express, I'll say this as well. You need to express your need and desire for sex to your spouse, even if you're in a challenging place.
Right.
Because that's a legitimate need. I wanna make sure I don't delegitimize our desire for sex. It's legitimate. And so I think we need to be communicating that to our spouses as well.
Amen on that. Another one would be lack of interest. So maybe it's not necessarily connectedness or unresolved conflict, but there's just no interest. And there are many reasons why one cannot be interested in the other, and that can be for both parties. It could be medically related, like sexual drive. For men, maybe their levels of testosterone are low. For women, their libido is low. And there's help for that. But I mean, the sexual drive can be low. It could be attraction. You know, you marry her, she's a pretty young thing, and she thick, and you know, she look good in them jeans. You know, but she maybe she's had 2 or 3 kids, or maybe you have a dad bod now, you know, and those muscles ain't popping in the same way that they used to, you know, when y'all was in college. But just being attracted can be the lack of attractiveness, and some people that's a hard thing, because people don't want to talk about that in fear of offending the other person and just causing conflict. And so you keep it in, but you're not explaining. The other person is like, what's going on? You know, and I think people can sense it. They can sense, are you not attracted to me? and you don't want to hurt that other person's feeling. But I don't know. I just feel like it's important to just be
necessary
real.
Conversation.
Yeah, necessary conversation.
When you signed up for marriage, you signed up for oneness, nothing hidden, not having secrets, not showing separation, and that includes your sexual life. And I think even if the spouse has to say something hard to the other spouse, how do you find the words and the time and the setting to say the hard thing, even if it's, I'm not physically attracted to you?
Right.
That's real.
That doesn't have to be an end to all things. Right. It just means maybe something has to change. Maybe there's a way that you guys can do something together to improve that. Yeah. Or maybe it's just what it is. There are some men who are not attracted to their wives while they're pregnant. Well, brother, there's nothing that she can do about a baby being inside of her body.
Right.
And so, different strokes for different folks. But I think lack of attraction is another big one. Again, we're thinking of these middle years, where it becomes more challenging.
And just what that lends to is, if that's the case, what can we do together to grow a new attraction?
Yeah.
And attraction isn't just, well, I like this, but you don't have it. Like, she may not have had that when you married her. He may not have had that when you married her. Now you want something. We're going to talk about porn in a little bit. The problem that does in marriage and setting expectations on spouses that are unreasonable, right? But if there's not that attraction, physical attraction is not the only attraction that shows itself in sex.
Right. That's so good.
And so there's emotional attraction. There's a yearning towards the other person because of who they are or who they have shown themselves to be in your life. I think I'm in the sense in that, like, I've been probably more than ever telling my wife how beautiful she is and how attracted I am to her.
Thank you.
And I know she's beautiful and all that, but I think there's some other attraction where she has shown herself to be in my corner, to be for me, to have my back in ways that makes me even more attracted to her.
Right.
And so physical stimulation is important, but it's not the only stimulation.
Yeah, because there's some very beautiful, we've seen beautiful women before and have said her personality kind of takes away from her beauty.
Absolutely.
And so, sister girl, if you're sassing him all day and disrespecting him and belittling him, and withholding honor from him consistently, you may be fine like wine, but he not be attracted to you or feel intimidated or unqualified to even approach you, and so you still don't get what you want because you're not treating him with honor and respect.
But the temperature gauge of sex is revealing something about the relationship that's important.
Right.
Right. And so that's big. And then porn. Man, I always say, let us be honest. And so a lot of people are coming into a marriage relationship. He's not a virgin. She's not a virgin. And so you're bringing your sexual history into your marriage. And then even multiple years after being married, if that's still working in your mind and you're still bringing that into the bedroom, then that's going to be a challenge. And then porn. The porn industry is bigger than basketball, football, baseball, all major sports combined. And so if you're looking at porn and bringing that into the bedroom and having expectations of your spouse because of something you saw on the screen and then upset that they're not responding the way the other person on the screen responded.
The actor and actress.
the person that's in really sexual slavery. Right. And so the reason why God, in his wisdom, and just the older I get, the more wise he becomes, is the understanding that your body is really for your spouse.
Yeah.
And when you give yourself to porn or you give yourself to some past image that you have in your mind of some other lover before you were married, you're bringing all this other stuff into your bedroom, and that could be contributing to what we call boredom. There are some people that I've spoken to that are no longer aroused by their spouse, regardless of what they do, because of all the stuff they're bringing into the bedroom.
Right. I think porn is one of the big triggers for that they're so engulfed in that there's no more drive to connect with a real person.
And so my encouragement there is there needs to be you repenting. If you're a believer, you hear this language, this repenting of sharing your body with some other image, some other person, and then bringing that into your marriage bed, and then defining who your spouse is or how good your spouse is based on something you saw on television. Right. Your spouse does not need to measure up to a porn actor. She's worth more than that. He's worth more than that. You married something that is complete. On porn, you're watching something that's a show. And so don't put that expectation on your spouse. And as you stop that, by God's grace, that's my prayer, unapologetically, you start seeing your spouse in a different way because you're not comparing them to some image.
Let's talk about that for a second, because there are Christians. I would say the majority of Christians that we know that we're in community with would agree that, because earlier I mentioned that the marriage bed is undefiled and we shouldn't really be telling people how to have sex. How is that? How is porn different? There are some Christians. Like I said, our community, for the most part, we believe that's sin, that, that we, as Christians, we shouldn't be watching porn, period. But there are some people who feel like, hey, it's not an actual person. It's not, it's not technically real. I should be able to engage in that, or as a married couple even should be able to engage in that to help the arousal for their own sexual. How is that different?
Yeah, we from another world. we are of a different culture. We march to the beat of a different drum. We're believers in Jesus. And Jesus says, if anyone looks at a woman, look where he defines adultery. If you look at a woman to lust after, you have already committed adultery in your heart. And so if that's happening, you know there's not a physical person in the bed with you, but there is a person in your heart. And God is looking at your heart, and what he wants fidelity, not just at the body level. He wants fidelity to him at the heart level. And that's something as believers we need to hold fast to. And here's the truth of the matter. It's killing your marriage.
Practically, that's good. Like statistics will bear us out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a rain on anyone's parade. It's really an encouragement to something more beautiful. And so we want to hold fast to that.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? We hope you are enjoying that episode. I want to encourage you to like, comment, share, subscribe. If you are listening to this on a podcast, I want to encourage you to leave a review.
Leave a review, yes. And we want to let you guys know that we're trying to build a community of middlers. So we have a Patreon page where you could interact with us on a more personal level. You can get exclusive content. So if you want to know more about our Patreon page, check out the description box below and click on that link. So enjoy the episode.
Peace.
Yeah, so I think the last kind of, and there are many, guys. If you have more, feel free to drop it in the comments. Hindrances to
share, subscribe
to your own marital intimacy, or to some that you know. But work and responsibilities, I think that's just very, very practical. We kind of touched on that earlier. As you get older, we ain't no spring chickens, and the energy level is not the same as when we were younger. Maybe you can't run as hard. By the time you get out of work, you're just like mentally drained, mentally, emotionally, physically drained. And it could depend on, the type of job that you have. I work in a hospital, at the bedside. So physically, I think mentally, because of the department that I work on, it's taxing mentally, but then it's also taxing physically. But I think even before I was a nurse, just having the kids running around with the kids is just taxing. And by the time we settle in for bed, and it's funny because I think with us, sometimes we give each other googly eyes earlier in the day, and you always be like, you talk a good game.
Girl, wait till later.
Right.
The next thing you know.
And have full intention, every intention to. But by the time I take that shower and hit that bed and the room is cold and the covers are comfortable, you just feel like all I want to do is go to sleep right now. Yeah. So I think that just practically schedules, lack of energy, stress, anxiety can wear on the mind. And
so, man, we want this beautiful thing. There's this stuff that hinders us. Man, what do we do to unwrap together the beautiful gift of sex that God's offered us? We want to give you some stuff to remember, some steps to take to build up your sex life. Okay. And the first thing that I want to say is, man, if you have not honored your spouse sexually, man, apologize for that. Apologize. Let me say this and be kind of just out front with it. When you engage in sex, your spouse should be reaching orgasms. Is that okay for me to say?
Say it. Say it, brother.
On the podcast, is that cool?
Say it.
They should be climaxing. And are you aware if your spouse is climaxing or not? Now this is the part to share. This is the part where you should send this to your spouse and say, I ain't said it. They said it.
Right.
But they should be enjoying this. And I know they're all kind of, that's a colorful term, and that's an easy statement, but sometimes a challenging reality because everyone's body's different.
Right.
But sir, ma'am, that's your job.
And it may not happen every time, but that is the goal.
That's the goal. And so if you have not served your spouse well sexually, apologize for that. And let's say, man, what do I need to do to make sure you are enjoying this?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if that conversation needs to happen, I want to encourage that to happen. And confession and apology is important in how we move forward.
And overall confession and apology. I mean, one of the hindrances that we talked about was conflict. Aim to get that right. Yeah. That should be the goal anyway. Not for the purposes of we want to have sex. You want to walk in peace and in oneness in your marriage overall. Yeah. And sex is one of the byproducts of that. It's one of the fruit that comes with walking in unity with one another.
But you don't want to have conflict so you can fuel not having sex with your spouse. So let me just stay in a constant, I'm mad at him. Right. I'm mad at her and I ain't giving you. No, that's if you're using your conflict to hinder sexual relationship, it's
really manipulation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's manipulation and it's control. It's not service. It's not sacrificial. It's not beautiful.
Right.
It doesn't stimulate good sex relationships.
Right. And this is just one of those things that once you get married, you realize sex don't come easy. Yeah. Not all the time anyway. Yeah. And as the years go by, it can be more challenging just because there's more baggage as the time goes by. And so it takes work. You got to work at getting there, and you'll see that it can be beautiful, but it takes work. It takes constant work.
Speaking of work, if you use your job as an excuse on why we can't have sex, that's wrong too.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Your primary job is at home. So if you go to your secular job and clock off of your secular job, okay, when you come through the door, you've clocked into your primary job. Right. Your primary job is be caring for your spouse. Right. And so you offer to that person what scriptures call that due benevolence, that service, that sacrificial service to your spouse. And so work shouldn't be the thing to hinder you. And I understand folks could be working 80 hours a week and all of that. Yeah. And I just think you got to find ways. You need to be creative in how you do that. But our goal is to be pleasing each other.
Right. And you may need to seek some help, whatever you have to do to
If it's a medical
resolve
issue,
that conflict.
Absolutely.
You know, you want it. You want to work for it.
The next one.
Yeah. Honesty in conversation. We touched on this earlier as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just honesty in conversation about sex. Talking about sex. What do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy?
That's good.
And the willingness to actually listen, not to hear them and come up with a bunch of excuses or to start taking jabs at them.
Mm-hmm.
But if your spouse is expressing to you something that they want that you're not providing, or something that they don't enjoy that you're doing, you thinking, oh yeah, this gonna be good. Right. And you know, meanwhile they're like, actually, I don't like that very much at all. I hate when you do that. Yeah. And then you mad because he or she said, I hate when you're doing that. Man, hear them.
I heard a quote recently that said, you may be working hard, but you're not doing good. And I think just because you're active doesn't mean you're successful in pleasing your spouse. And so I would encourage, ask questions, because the goal is not just to do what you want to do in sex. Right. It's to serve the other. The other thing I think that's important is there needs to be agreement by both parties on what's going to happen during sex. You may want something, but the other person doesn't want it. Here's what that means. Until there's unison, you guys don't violate each other's conscience. And so I want to encourage you to be in unison in what happens sexually. But what you guys agree upon, man, explore that.
Yeah, I think that's important because, you know, there could be something that you're trying to push on your spouse and you feel like they're obligated to do it because you guys are married. And I think in a sense that is a violation. And I want to be careful in how I say that, but you know, a person needs to be comfortable, and maybe she's just not there yet. Yeah. Maybe he's just not there yet, not ready to explore that. I do feel though that it's still important for them to verbalize their desire. You know, that's don't hold it in. Oh, well, she mentioned one time 3 years ago that that's not something that, you know, she would be willing to do, or she doesn't like it. But if that's what you desire, you need to be bold enough to tell your spouse that that's something that you want. I think it's important. No.
Yeah. Planning. Man, I think that planning can be very helpful in marriages when it comes to when are we going to have sex, how often are we going to have sex. I think you want to talk about that. We already talked about it. But there's some times where it just doesn't happen, and it goes on for a point where you say you're going to do it, but you don't do it. He said he's going to do it, but he don't do it. How can you plan something on the schedule? How can you get babysitters if you need it? How can you get a better lock on your bedroom door?
Right. Lock them jokers out.
You know, like, how do I set the scene for this to go down? Because I want this to go down. And so planning is super important.
And it almost sounds offensive, like, because we want it to be so natural, like it shouldn't happen this way, but we have to put it on the schedule. But everything else you put on the schedule. Come on. There are a lot of things that you do in your life that's not necessarily natural. You get up, you go to work. That's not just naturally you prancing into the office
or schedule.
Exactly. If you go to school, that's something that's planned. If you're going to an event, that's something that's planned. Even if you're grabbing coffee with a dear friend to have an intimate conversation, that's typically planned. And so, you know, what we're not saying is that it needs to be something that's robotic. Like, okay, it's time. So, you know, it's time. You know,
but I think one of the things our culture has done is romanticize sexual experiences to the point where we feel like it needs to be steamy, it needs to be hot.
Right.
No, we need to serve one another.
Right.
And that may not be this special scene, but it needs to happen.
Yeah. Another one is draw close. We kind of talked about being disconnected and just missing one another, but to just find a way to draw close to one another, and find a way to be connected with one another. Sometimes that's a text throughout the day. You know, I love you, I'm thinking about you, or how's your day going? So it's finding creative ways to connect with one another at a heart level, to check in on one another, to keep the connectedness going. is important, so that it doesn't end up being you're in the bedroom and it's time and the other person's just feeling completely disconnected from you.
And then also minimizing distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So like take a bath. It's important.
Wash your behind.
Some wife out there was like, yes.
Right. You're welcome.
Take a bath. Man, get babysitters. Set the mood. Be intentional. Mm-hmm. You set up intentionality in every other area of your life. Do it in your sex life as well. Right. And then lastly, man, if you need help, seek it.
Yeah.
Seek it. There are sexual counselors. There are people that you can talk to. In our session, we talked about community. This is important of having healthy relationships where you talk to people that aren't going to spread stuff about you all over the street, but
not some random person of the opposite sex. You complaining, to your what do you call it, your work wife or your work husband about your sexual intimacy. That's completely inappropriate. But finding a way to get the help that you need, whether even if it's about resolving general conflict, so that you can get to a place of intimacy.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say is, you're going to get through this. Whatever the hard difficulty is in middle years, you're going to get through this. And there's something that is beautiful and attractive and fulfilling on the other side as you press your way through the current difficulty of being married in the middle. Man, we love y'all. We're so thankful to serve y'all. If you need us, reach out to us. You can connect with us. Check out our various stuff.
Marriedinthemiddle.com. Sure. Check out our social media. Like this episode. Subscribe. It only takes a second.
But I think
share.
I think it's beautiful when you have couples that are enjoying their sex life, enjoying being married, and following the Lord Jesus as he commands us and leads us into what he has for us. So that's all we got for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, all that good jazz. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Peace. Bye.